Hi, this is Dr. Noseworthy. I wanted to take the next few minutes and just share with you some of the frustrations that my clients have with the modern medical system that you might share. I want you to know that you're not alone. I've spent some time over the years talking to my clients about their sources of frustrations, and we can boil it down to a couple of simple statements that you might identify with. The first is that they go to the medical doctor and they clearly have problems, but when the medical doctor looks at their test, they say everything is normal, and they wonder, well, why do I still feel so bad? Still others have this idea that they don't really feel sick, they just don't feel right, and because of that, and their tests are normal, the doctor really doesn't know what to do with them. Other people will tell me, I'm tired of going to my medical doctor, all he or she wants to do is give me another prescription. I really want to know what's wrong with me. And this is the one that breaks my heart when I hear it. They keep telling me it's all in my head. I'm really starting to think that they're right. Well, I'm here to tell you that your symptoms are real and you're not crazy, but you might be looking for answers in the wrong place. What we're going to go over in the next few minutes is what I call the frustration matrix. We're just going to make a few comments about each of these so that we don't take too much of your time, because I know that's valuable. The first source of frustration is what I call the paradigm mismatch. There's a big difference between what you might be looking for and what your doctor is looking for. All of my clients are looking for health and well-being. They want to get better as naturally as possible. But when you go to your medical doctor, they're really looking for disease and not health. And their training tells them that drugs and surgery are the answers to almost all of the complaints that walk in through their door. That's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It might be a good idea, but it really doesn't work in the end. The second source of frustration is what we call black and white thinking. The medical system recognizes only two states of being. You either have a disease or you don't. But in reality, the human body is designed a little bit differently than that. Yes, we have states of no disease and disease, but we also have a gray zone of dysfunction in between where we're losing control of our body systems, but that may not necessarily be classified as a disease process. The third source of frustration is the fact that the medical definition of normal is not really normal. If we look at that black and white, you have a disease or you don't concept, this can be illustrated by looking at what we call the normal range or the reference interval on lab tests. And you may have seen this on your own blood test. This is the range of values in between which, if your test results fall there, you're considered normal because you don't have a disease. Disease occurs when your values are either too high or too low in comparison to that reference interval, or what we call the normal range. But did you ever ask yourself, where does this definition of normal come from? The truth is that the labs set their own normal ranges. So whether you live in Florida, California, Texas, New York, or Panama, whether or not you're normal depends on where you are and not who you are. We also need to consider the factor of who gets their blood test done. Is it healthy people or high-level athletes that might represent the epitome of health and well-being? Well, of course not. It's sick people. People with diabetes and heart disease, people with thyroid problems and taking multiple medications. And what's going on in their blood chemistry is being factored into what we consider normal. Remember, it's a statistical average of tests that are done over a period of time. So when your medical doctor looks at your blood test and says everything is normal, what he's really saying is that compared to all of my other sick patients, you look about the same. Think of it this way. What the medical system defines as normal is a statistical average of the test results of sick people. And that should concern you. So we really have to redefine normal. Let's go back to our black and white thinking again in the medical system. Well, in essential medicine, we completely agree where disease begins and ends. What we don't agree on is this concept that everything else is normal. We prefer to think of in terms of what are you designed for? Where does your body operate the best? And we'll call this optimal. So your zone of optimal dysfunction exists right in the middle of the medical normal range. But that leaves a no man's land, a zone of dysfunction, so to speak, where you're not working as well as you should, but things have not gotten so bad that you can actually qualify for a disease classification. And this brings us to our fourth source of frustration, and that's really understanding now that disease is not something that you catch, it's something that you lose, and it's really a loss of wellness. So when we lose the ability to maintain balance in our bodies, or what we technically call homeostasis, we end up with dysfunction and eventually disease. We can show that in another way. If we start out designed for health and well-being, As we lose balance or homeostasis, we get into a zone of dysfunction, and if we continue to lose balance and homeostasis, we'll end up with a disease process. So when you go to see your medical doctor and he runs his tests and says, well, you're not sick, and you look at yourself and say, well, I'm not well, then chances are you're right here. You're in that zone of dysfunction because you've lost the ability to maintain control and balance within your body. Let's illustrate that one more time. Let's say that we have a light bulb that's giving off light. Well, what happens when we turn it out? Of course, everything gets dark. And if we understand that health and well-being comes from the ability to maintain a balance and homeostasis, when we lose balance, we end up with disease and dysfunction. So where does that leave you? Probably with a few questions, but that's okay. I've always said that to get the right answers, you've got to ask the right questions. So instead of asking questions like, what disease do I have, or what drug can control my symptoms, I'd like you to start thinking in terms of asking, well, where have I lost homeostasis? And what natural compounds can help correct my imbalances, rather than just compensating them by forcing my body and controlling symptoms with drugs. So if you go to drnoseworthy.com and click on the New Clients tab, I've made my new client orientation video and article available to anyone who is interested if you share the frustration with the medical system that most of my clients do. It doesn't mean you're becoming a client of mine. It's just information that I think people need to know. But in that video and article, I talk about the essential medicine paradigm. That is, the principles and priorities that underline my thought process that help me determine what tests to run and how to interpret them to help you understand why you're frustrated and you're not getting results that you look for. And within that orientation video and article, I go a step further and then show you actually how you can start doing some of this work on your own. And if you really need my help, I'll make myself available to you then as well. So there you have it, the frustration matrix and the most common reasons why you're not getting the results that you're looking for. I hope at some point you decide to contact me if you share that frustration so that you can find some answers, results, and hope of your own.